Samsung Galaxy S24 8 months later. In this video, I'm going to give you my experience with this phone after all this time. And of course, like in every video, I'm also going to bring in the S24 Ultra or the iPhone 16 during the video for some comparison so we can get a better idea of how good or bad this phone is. But anyways, as always, let's begin by talking about the exterior design, which, as you can see at a first glance, remains pretty much identical to the one we got last year on the S23. The only difference is that now we have, like in pretty much every phone, it seems like it's a trend, we have flat edges on the sides, which it's a matter of personal preference, of course. Like some people are going to like it more, some others are going to prefer the old design we had on the S23. In my case, I feel like I don't know, I like it. It looks and feels really good. But on the other hand, being completely honest, I also feel like the old shiny aluminum was a little bit more premium. And sure, maybe it was only for the first couple days until it got completely obliterated by fingerprints, and then it felt dirtier and I guess less premium than the matte aluminum we have now. But I guess that's, as I said, a matter of personal preference. But yeah, besides that, it seems to be almost identical. It still feels really good, especially when comparing to the iPhone. The matte glass on Samsung phones, for some reason, feels smoother and more premium, more polished, so to say, than the matte aluminum on the iPhone. Now, when it comes to the size, it is a little bit bigger than the Galaxy S23. It goes from 6.1 inches to 6.3 inches diagonally, so it is going to have a slightly bigger display. But it also has slightly slimmer bezels all around the display, so the physical size of the phone is not much bigger, and it feels really similar when you have it in your hand. Oh, and by the way, something I forgot to tell you at the beginning, if you want to buy this phone, right now it has a really good price on Amazon. I left a link down below in the description, just in case at the end of the video you want to take a look. But anyways, that being said, let's move on to what's probably one of the most controversial components on this phone, the processor. Because this phone, depending on where you live, is going to have a different version of the processor or CPU. So if you live in the US or Canada or Japan, then you are good. You are going to get the Snapdragon 8 Generation 3 optimized for Samsung, which right now is the fastest processor you can get on an Android phone and is going to give you an amazing experience navigating the system, opening apps. It is very reliable. It manages temperatures relatively well. But as I said, that's not going to be available for everyone. If you live anywhere else on the planet, India, Europe, anywhere else, you are going to get the Exynos 2400 or 2400, I don't know how it's called, but it's the Exynos processor made by Samsung for this phone. And don't get me wrong, it is a good processor and it also feels relatively good when navigating the system, but it is not nearly as fast as the Snapdragon processor. And that's a shame because some people spending the exact same amount of money are going to get a better phone than others just based on the place they live. So for reference, here are the CPU results for Geekbench 6. The S24 Ultra has the Snapdragon 8 Generation 3, and it scored 2200 on the single core and 7000 on the multi-core. And the S24, because I live in Spain, has the Exynos 2400, and it scored noticeably less in the single core and multi-core performance. In fact, this is pretty much the score you would get on last year's Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra with the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2. So you could argue it is one generation old as opposed to the Snapdragon counterpart. So yeah, as I said earlier, the feeling when you navigate around the device, it is really good on both phones. Simple apps open instantaneously, and you're not going to notice that much of a difference right now. But one of the biggest advantages of having a really good processor is not that it's going to run especially well today, but more so in 4, 5, or 6 years. Because it has such leftover power, when operative systems become more demanding and when apps become more demanding, your phone, having a better processor, is going to be able to withstand the test of time better, so to say, than a phone that launched with a worse processor. So if you get the S24 Ultra or any other phone with a Snapdragon 8 Generation 3, you are going to have a better performance in 5 or 6 years than you would if you got the Exynos. And as I said, it is kind of shady because it is the same phone, it is marketed as the same product, but depending on where you live, you are going to get a different processor. And mind you, Samsung doesn't say anything about it. They are going to market the phone as it is on the United States with the Snapdragon chip. But if you live in the UK or Germany or France or Spain or any other place on the planet, you are not going to get that phone you were sold and you were charged for. But anyways, that being said, let's move on to one of my favorite features on the S24, which is the battery life. So as I said earlier, I've been using the phone for 8 months. Sometimes I used it as my personal device. Some other times I had it as a secondary device without a SIM card. And I am happy to say that all throughout the past 8 months, this phone has been incredible when it comes to battery life. When I used it as my personal device, it lasted me 1 full day. I'm not going to fool you or market this phone as a battery champ because we all know that the bigger phones are better when it comes to battery life. But for being a relatively compact phone, the smallest phone on the premium Samsung lineup, this phone is actually really, really good. The only phone, I have to say it, I have to be honest, the only phone that I've seen with the same screen size surpass the S24 in battery life are the new iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. These phones are incredible. I mean, I'm not really sure what Apple has done, but they've noticeably increased the battery life on these phones. Last year with the iPhone 15s, S24 was slightly better, but this year until the S25, I think Apple has the win in terms of battery life. But either way, the S24 Ultra is more than enough for most people. You're not going to have to charge it midday, which I feel like is the main goal. Like if I can get through today and put it in the charger at night, I'm not really interested in like getting a little bit more or a little bit less at the end of the day. What you want to do is you want to use your phone all through the day without worrying about the phone battery. And then at night, you just plug it in and it charges throughout the night. Now, that being said, one of my favorite features on the S24 is the operative system. And well, not just the operative system, because as you can see, it has Android 14, but it also has One UI 6.1. And I think that is this phone's secret sauce. I cannot stress this enough. The days where Samsung's launcher was laggy as opposed to native Android are over. This phone feels super smooth, super reliable, properly optimized. Everything works. In the past 8 months, both with the S24 and S24 Ultra, I have never had a crash. No apps have frozen on me. I've not had any weird performance issues. This feels as smooth, as optimized, so to say, as an iPhone. So yeah, I'm really, really happy. That being said, though, I think they've just launched Android 15 for the S24, S24 Ultra, and Google Pixel phones. I would suggest if you have this phone or if you're planning on buying it in the next couple weeks, I would heavily suggest you wait to see how Android 15 works on other devices because this works incredibly well. The Android 14 and One UI 6.1 combo is insane, so let's wait a little bit to see if this level of optimization remains on the newer versions, because it would be a shame to get rid of this fluid and smooth and properly well executed of an experience just to have a couple new features. And I guess that's the second thing that we could talk about in terms of software, the AI features. With Android 14 and One UI 6 on the latest Samsung phones, we've gotten some very interesting AI features like, for example, the ability to remove objects from a picture. Let me select a picture of my dog. There it is, this one right here. We can actually come to the edit button, and as you can see, there is a new AI functionality. Well, you're going to see this around the system if you get this phone. This feature launched a long time ago, and it was not super good. It was kind of messy. And I have to say, it has improved over time. In this past 8 months with the S24 and S24 Ultra, I've noticed that the feature has been refined. It works better. It works faster. That's something I've noticed. Like, it doesn't take as much time to process the images and apply the AI tweaks that I want, or it doesn't take as much time to translate or summarize text. And I think that's because, that's the thing with AI. It learns from its mistakes, so it gets better every day. You come back tomorrow and it's going to be a little bit better. You come back the next day, you get a software update, boom, it is better. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what new AI features are brought in the new Android 15 and One UI 7. But mind you, if you buy this phone or if you have this phone and you're not happy with the AI features, just know that every day they are going to get better. But anyways, that being said, let's move on to what is probably the most interesting and important part or component on this phone, the cameras, which are almost identical to the ones on the Galaxy S23. We have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, we have a 50 megapixel main sensor or camera, and we have a 3x telephoto with 10 megapixels. This, I've noticed, I'm pretty sure nobody else has said this in a video, but it is like a little Easter egg in a bad way. And it's that this camera on paper has 10 megapixels. It is a 10 megapixel sensor, so it has a 10 megapixel resolution. But when you come to the camera and you select, let me show you, you select the 3x camera, up top here it says 12 megapixels, as if it had 12 megapixels, but it actually doesn't. If you take a picture, it should say 10 megapixels, but it says 12. There it is. If you look up the stats, I promise, if you look up the stats on Google of this phone, you'll see that this camera has 10 megapixels, but Samsung advertises it as a 12 megapixel picture, and it tells you that you are taking 12 megapixel pictures. I'm sure this is because they have some kind of upscaling technology that cranks it up to 12 megapixels, but I still think it is a little shady considering that the sensor is 10 megapixels. So you can do all the upscaling you want. It is a 10 megapixel native picture. That being said, and aside from that, I think this camera is more than enough for the majority of people. It is maybe not as exciting as the one on the S24 Ultra, and of course I'm biased because I've tried both phones, but it is just good. It brings you the ultra-wide functionality for group photos or for buildings or for landscapes. You have the main camera with a lot of quality, so if you want to take a picture of someone or of something with the utmost quality and resolution, you have that option. And then you have the portrait mode 3x to take pictures of tiny things that are very detailed. You want to capture a lot of information on that picture. You want to get an up-close shot of something and capture the most amount of detail possible. You can do that with the 3x telephoto. So it is a very complete camera. It is really good. It is really fast, by the way. Something I've noticed is Samsung has worked a lot on the fluidity when taking pictures and taking a look at those pictures. Back in the day, there was like a delay between the moment you took the picture and the moment the picture was available to be seen and zoomed in on. But yeah, Samsung has caught up to what we can see on other phones like the iPhone, which has always been the king when it comes to the camera interface. So yeah, there's nothing special to say in this regard because, as I said, it is almost identical to what we had last year on the S23, and it doesn't bring any of those fancy new exciting features we get on the Ultra, but it is a really solid camera. At the end of the day, I guess that's what you want when getting this phone. You want the flagship level quality without all the extra gimmicks that raise the price $400 to $500 above the base model. So yeah, I think the S24 is a really, really solid device. A lot of people say it's boring, and I could say that too. I mean, having used it for 8 months, it has not brought any excitement. Day one, I remember getting this phone and it just didn't feel like, oh, new phone. But at the same time, you're spending a lot less money and you're getting what actually matters on a phone. Really good display, really good materials, really good processor, really good camera, really good everything, really good battery life, which is really important. So yeah, it's got you covered. It has the flagship quality. All the important things have a tick. So I think it is the perfect device for those of you who want an Android phone that is really good, but once again, don't care for the gimmicks. this is the phone for you in that case. Now, that being said, once again, you have this phone on Amazon with an incredible price. Let me say it again. It has an incredible price on Amazon. And now that the video is about to end, I recommend you go take a look.